afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most valuable hours of your day. I'm Michael, the MC for today's adventure. Today's show, The Trauma Economy, Part 2. Today is also Monday, which means a journaling update segment near the end. Before we get into our topic today, let me introduce my co host. First is Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator.
Before I go, I want to have the stage clear for me, so I would like to ask Tim to mute himself from the typing. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
Is Willow here? I think Willow jumped in right at the end.
I
Willow,
Trauma
am.
sound
consultant.
I made it
check.
in
Oh, you,
time.
we can hear you.
Yay.
Deirdre, our development strategist.
Hey, everybody.
Tim, our expert executive analyst.
Hi guys, I'm off mute now.
And finally, Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you.
Wow. There we go. Adding a little diversity there. And for those of you that are viewing live and have questions or comments, please feel free to ask, and we will try and accommodate you. So, this is our part 2 of the trauma economy concept show. And this is part 2. And the first part was the identify and awareness. This is the part about skills and solutions. And so, in regard to talking about the trauma economy, we're aware that there's a problem. Currently out there in the world, people are being traumatized by this system. And, what do we do? How do we solve the problems? What are the solutions? What are the skills that are necessitated by the situation that we see out there in the world? And what can we learn to overcome the madness? So, does anybody have any particular advice or ideas about what we can do? I've got a couple in the box here, but who wants to throw something out? What do you see as far as possible solutions or skills that people might use?
Well, I feel that the situation really seems to have asked me to take a stance in one aspect of my life, which is in relationship to students and student parents, because obviously as the physical classes that I usually teach are off for the time being, have to be off officially. That is a huge impact on my, not only on my day-by-day income, but also like on on the whole structure of the group that I have been able to build up here over the last year and a half or so. And then of course there was this thing in the air with the present situation, the whole virus thing, and then there's diverse viewpoints on the situation and of the several aspects of that situation. So for me, it was in continuing my communication with my students, which I also see is way beyond my clients. That's like my extended family. So continuing the communication with them, I felt that I was asked to take a stance, not to push my opinion or my perspective on anybody, but just maybe to offer a perspective that most of the people are not, even in a position of acknowledging or of even getting, because through the mass media and through the official broadcast via TV, social media, and whatever, I feel that the great majority of people, at least in my environment, would not be able to even get an alternative perspective and view on things. So I did that. That was an interesting experience. But so I feel that one of the things that I have been asked is like to take a stance and to just express maybe like an alternative viewpoint, which I have been able to gain through communication with you guys and through Autonomy and other sources.
Yeah, I would just say, I think in general, I think a good rule of thumb is do the opposite of what the average person is doing. If people are, feeling dependent and reactive to the circumstances, be proactive, and so taking charge of the circumstance, taking charge of the situation is definitely one step in the right direction, and be proactive. If there's something out there, if there's an elephant in the room, and I know there's a lot of elephants in the room these days when it comes to questions and concerns. And I know, like, business owners and stuff, there's always that idea of can we get insurance if we do this? you know um, Certainly that's a real plus in Mexico, by the way, because you don't have to have that concern. People might die from it. No big deal. But um, what kind of things are the opposite of what's going on in the regular world that you might be able to recommend?
So, Mike,
Kindness.
people are focused on their external fears and external events, and they're being driven by fear. And they're listening to people tell them what they need to think and believe and do. And this is actually an opportunity to look inwards and to take the time to take care of yourself and your family and the people that you care about in a different way, and to not lose sight of your overall mission in life, and to pick up pieces where you can, and take some of those things on that you might not have taken on in the past, and to forge your own trail. Because the outside world is going to do what it's going to do, but if you focus inward, you can control. That's what you can control, is your thoughts and feelings and actions, and that's about it.
Absolutely. Deirdre, you had something?
Yeah, kindness. I'd say I don't see a lot of that. So I try and remember to do that. I know this isn't a current thing, but it happened probably at the beginning of the year. An older man was walking around asking everybody if they had an $5 in change, and nobody was giving him any change. And I overheard him because I was walking towards him, talking to the person in front of me, and he needed it because they increased his prescription, and he only budgeted for a certain amount, and so he literally had no extra money. And I was actually shocked that people weren't even giving him the time of day. As soon as he asked for the money, they would run the other direction. And I gave him the money. I trusted that that's what he was going to do with it. And he did. But I don't know, show that type of kindness, that level of compassion. We're all going through it.
Yeah, I think the kindness can really make a difference in the trauma economy. And Deirdre, check your phone. But definitely, I think that in all of the issues that we're having with supply and demand and stuff, there are some really great groups on Facebook for our area where people are basically, I need this, I got this, I need this, and it's so quick. Within 3 hours, most people are receiving whatever they need, whether it's a bed, an apartment, a place to stay for free, a place to stay paid, anything that they're looking for. Somebody was looking for masks, 3D printed. The guy with the 3D printer showed up and said, okay, yeah, I have them. How many do you need? You know what I mean? It's so fast that even if, the powers that be are not really responding to these needs, people are doing it for themselves like we always knew that they would, right?
Yeah.
Hold on. I got something to show you. I can't find it. Look.
Did you click on the link I sent you? Click on the link I sent you in Discord. Okay, enough. That was the sideline. Sorry, guys.
Well, the idea here is that the trauma economy is driven by trauma. So if we're being traumatized, what are the things that we can do, in regard to sensing a situation in which we are traumatized, or you see people being traumatized? What can we do to help people deal with trauma as it's happening?
That's a great question, and I think like part of what was said a while ago is already answering. Like what comes to my mind is, of course, the wheel is still fresh in my mind. So it's like, okay, how to overcome trauma, and on a physical level, what can I do? Okay, like I feel great if I work out. Okay, I can do something with my children, but I'm right now like I can go outside jogging. Maybe I find even somebody. So that will help me, to be out in nature. That will kind of soothe my body, and like the sun has been shining, the sky has been blue these days, so that's great. So I can find positive things right there on like a physical level. um or what other things untraumatize me, or there's great music, or dedicate some time to something that I really like and really love. On an emotional level, what can I do? Like just to mm, make it something really like in your consciousness. It's like, okay, today I'm going to look at one thing on each of those levels that make up my holistic being, and I'm going to do something that soothes me, that brings me into balance and into harmony. And then by the time I start to do the first thing that comes to my mind, or maybe I could read this book, and that will give me some great ideas, and will mentally or intellectually like put me in a nice space. And once I start even do like a simple thing like that, then it seems like naturally other good things will happen, and my day will kind of shift towards looking for solutions, instead of like being bogged down by the trauma around me.
It's awesome. Sorry,
Mula, do you have anything to add?
we were smiling at the children beside you, Dennis, not at you. Deirdre had two children
Oh,
run in and out.
it's so hilarious. I locked the door and I'm like, no, that'll be fine. And so they decided to climb through the window because the screen in the window is broken, and that's why it got bright. And I'm just like, oh, okay. And then they just started like pouring in. I'm like, I'll unlock the door. It's okay.
That is hilarious. um, my response would be, I think the most important. I guess I don't want to say the most important. One of the basic skills that can be highly essential, in every situation, is learning how to self-soothe, and beyond that, learning how to ask for help from other people to soothe. So, um, like if you're in an argument and you start to feel triggered because they're raising their voice, having the courage to say, even though this argument sucks and I don't want to actually continue an argument, I would like to continue this argument, but I can't right now because I can't even think straight. This is going to sound stupid. Can we hug for a second and let me calm down? Or can I walk away and calm down and come back and be like, all right, I'm over that. That had nothing to do with what you were saying. It had to do with other things, and sometimes the conversation gets sidetracked a little. Um, that's probably the most essential part, like, of healing, is taking that time to acknowledge what you feel and then deal with it, and don't just try to stuff it back in the closet. Don't just try to get through it. Allow yourself to have that emotion and then analyze it later, I guess. Sorry, I'm dealing with allergies really bad, so
Oh,
I'm like,
you mean you're not contagious?
no. Sneezing is not a symptom of COVID-19, so I'm good. It's allergies. My eyes are all itchy and red, and yeah, it's.
I was-
Do you get
I'm
it every
sneezing.
season? When there's a season change?
Yeah.
I do.
Yep. I get it mostly like the eyes and the sneezing. I have been sneezing about 15 times in a row, about every 20
I
minutes.
get that too.
If I just like cut off, it's because I'm sneezing and I don't want you guys to see my weird sneeze face, because everyone hates that face. It's even worse when it's on video because it never catches you at a good moment.
Or it freezes right in that moment.
Don't
Okay,
talk
back
me
to the
about
trauma
bad.
economy.
Don't talk to me about bad moments on video.
What do you guys think about, with the constant kind of bad news coming at people, and these special reports and special bulletins and stuff like that? And as this stuff starts to just keep coming in, people almost get addicted to like this bad news, And so when they don't get any, update on bad news, they start to lose it as well. It's almost like they've become addicted to, special report, news flash bulletin, something else has gone wrong.
But think about people do that on a regular day too. Like whenever somebody's pregnant, people are like, "Oh yeah, I knew this lady, and she died. She died in her 6 month. She didn't even know. She died in bed." Like they're always saying that. People who have been pregnant can tell us, right? And so that's just how humanity deals with stuff. I think we have
Well,
to be resilient. Sorry,
I
go ahead.
agree with Mike that there is a certain addiction because you see this with um, children who have been living with abuse. They learn how to shut it off, like all their emotions. So whenever they do start to feel their emotions, it's like really, really intense. And I lost my train of thought of how that tied in.
For me, it's almost the contrary because I haven't really like watched TV for more than a decade, like for years, and like I don't follow almost any of the none actually of the whole mainstream thing. So if I ever get anything, it's like really anecdotal. But then even that just recent thing that was happening, with staying into contact with my group and the parents of the children that I train, is like it kind of hit me home in a different way because it was difficult for me to imagine where they are or to like follow where they're coming from because they're the kind of media or the I guess the news or the information that I'm exposed to on a day by day basis, mainly like through Autonomy and through the other different channels that I'm following, which is all like alternative news basically. Like it was hard for me to actually recognize where they are because of their because of them being influenced by mainstream media, and there's a huge difference. And so it felt a little difficult for me to actually try to catch them where they are, because it seemed just so far away from where I was with the kind of information that I got. And then I think it's important actually to be able to try to stand in somebody else's shoes, so to say, and to get an idea of how they think and of how they think in order then to understand where they are and in order to have a better way of maybe getting to them or speaking, communicating in a way that they also will be able to understand what you want to tell them and where you're coming from.
Well, with all these people off though, and nothing else to do other than watch movies, and apparently the biggest selling movies these days on Netflix is Contagion, and essentially more of the same kind of stuff that actually is really steering people to be even more hysterical and kind of potentially panicked because they think it's even larger than it is. Uh, how do what can they do? Do they just stop? Do they just walk away? Do they walk out into the park? Well, I guess they can't do that, but uh, walk out into the park in their mind.
Some people can walk out in the park still.
Yeah.
So it brings a couple things to mind, Mike. And I won't go too deep into the mainstream media because Agnieszka will cut me off. But I'm thinking about catastrophic thinking or all or nothing thinking. So it's either all good or all bad, or it's going to be a catastrophe, complete catastrophe. There's no in between. It can't be an in between. And that's what sells attention, is drawing people. It's a cognitive distortion. The other one is a mental filter. So you only focus on the negative with the discounting any positive aspects of what's going on whatsoever. And the way around those are to kind of dial it back and to take an in between view and think of things in shades of gray, and not that it's an absolute truth and 100% positive, that 100% probability that the worst thing is going to happen to you. That is never the case. And
Yeah.
thinking in shades of gray can bring people into emotional regulation, but that's not what the media wants to happen.
Yeah, I would say I have this rule. I call it the power of three, and essentially it revolves around a lot of different things. But in regard to like a false dichotomy. And when you're offered two choices, you either do this or that. There's always a third choice. So what is the third choice? Just creating that in your own mind to think, hold it, what's the third choice? Is it both? Is it neither? Is it, there's all kinds of things, but just doing that, I think, is really a key. And
So
that kind
if
of
you
backs
can,
up what you're talking
Willow, can you spare that? Can
What?
you really spare that?
I don't understand.
And toilet paper.
I have to, unless you don't want to see. This is like, oh man, and my nose, my face is so raw. Like I'm having to put coconut oil all over my face just because I'm using the cheap toilet paper at least.
Good. Good.
Does that exist?
Yeah. Um, I wanted to touch on something that Tim had said about fearing the unknown. And that's it's a wonderful way to put it because that's what you think that you're doing. But in reality, at least from my own personal experience with almost every single client that I have dealt with, when I ask them, what are you afraid of happening if this scenario plays out? Like if we decide to talk about this more, what do you think is going to happen? And they'll be like, oh, something bad. So, I don't know, but something bad. And that's why I'm afraid, because I don't know. And I'll say, but if you don't know, then you don't know that it's something bad. You don't know if it's something good. Like, you don't know. If you're afraid of it, you're kind of assuming that it's something bad. So what made you have that assumption in the first place? And what is this bad negative thing that you're imagining in your mind? And most people, a lot of the times it comes down to abandonment, because they'll be like, oh, I was afraid, or I was dealing with this situation and I thought that I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't doing the things that I should be doing. And they'd be like, but I'm not afraid of abandonment. And actually, this has happened with quite a few of my clients as well. Not as consistently as the other one. But when I ask them, like, well, what makes you afraid of that? Why is that situation so terrifying? And they usually correlate it back to, well, I was worried about being abandoned. I was worried that usually it comes back to abandonment when you're a child, because that is a child's biggest fear, is I don't have a caretaker anymore. But the older you get, the more complex the reasons get. But I guess my point is, usually we are not afraid of something that we don't know. We are actually afraid of something that we think we know what's going to go on, and it's usually something negative. If we can analyze what you think is going to happen, we can usually get down to, okay, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. We can figure it out. And that creates that third option.
I think what the media try to do in order to garner clicks and views and watching and stuff is really exaggerate the worst case scenario a lot of the time, right? Like and we can see that on a regular time, even when like the regular American news or even Canadian news show up on a daily basis, right? Some things they really blow it out of proportion, some things they don't even include at all, and it's always very carefully chosen what they include and why. And why do they include it? They include it because it gives something back to them. Like they're not going to include a story that's not going to give them anything back, right? Because it's a business. It's not, it's not altruistic.
Agnieszka, it's pretty interesting that they're taking your time.
Oh, it is you touching your mic. It is you.
They're taking your. I have to hold it. They're taking your time.
She's honed in on you. She was listening. I could see her. She's like slightly listening to see who it was.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Tim.
I mean, they're taking your energy, right? They take your time, your attention, and your energy, and that's the idea. And they make dollars off of that. They make dollars out of your energy. And two things that kind of came up for me when Mike and Willow were talking were the dialectic. So they give you two choices, and anything that you choose that's in the middle of those two things suits their needs. and then they just split the dialectic again, and then you choose something in, and it gets narrower and narrower and narrower, your choices. So you have to think outside of the dialectic. And then also there's the concept of magical thinking. So if you think that by worrying about these things, they're going to be, I'm going to have an influence on them if I just worry about them. If I have enough anxiety, then my anxiety will translate into a better outcome because it's magic.
I used to think that as a child. I used to think, like, at one point as a child, I came up with a correlation between if I don't worry about stuff, it's not going to happen. It's going to get canceled. Like, so if I say I'm going to the movies with my friends and I'm really looking forward to it, I'm really excited about it, I need to worry about it not happening, because if I never think of it not happening, it's not going to happen. So I don't know where I got that correlation, but that's exactly the magical thinking that you're talking about. If I don't worry, if I don't stress myself, if I don't damage my body with cortisol and things that are excreted by my brain as I think about these worst case scenarios, then everything will go to shit.
Yeah, there is that thing of if I don't worry, then it's gonna turn out bad for me. And then there's also this concept of it's always gonna be I always have to be on guard for the worst possible outcome. And in reality,
To protect myself from it.
yeah, but the outcome is always somewhere in between, and a lot of things just don't happen at all that we project into the future. And then
Apparently, statistically, 90% of the things we worry about don't happen at all.
Well, I mean, I was kind of worried I had to go do this. I signed up for this triathlon at work, and I'm kind of like out of shape. So I started doing some jogging, and I got a bike, and then I haven't ridden the bike, and it's coming up, and lo and behold, it got canceled. So there was nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I just wanted to expand on a point that Agnieszka made. It's not necessarily worrying about the worst case scenario that produces all of the cortisol. It is worrying and not being able to imagine any solution. So if you can imagine, like, you can worry about something, but if you can't imagine a solution out of it, your body goes into shutdown because it's a trauma response. It's like, I can't fight this. I can't run from it. I just have to deal with it. Well, the only way to deal with it is to not be here. So it will shut off part of your ability to accurately perceive reality.
Yeah.
And one thing, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say the last thing was about Tim was saying about your energy. One of the quotes in my course that I'm working on is about how after trauma, all the energy of the person, the survivor, is redirected and rerouted to deal with the inner chaos, to deal with the secretion of adrenaline and cortisol and the new normal that the brain has associated as, like, the brain basically associates trauma as normal. So that was it.
One thing I focus on remembering when I catch myself worrying is to laugh. That's like a quick right away thing to get out of that worrying mode. Because if you laugh, you don't feel it's difficult to even
How
feel
much
pain
do you
physically.
do that? How much do you do
Well,
that? I remember going on one of those theme park rides, and I was like going up and going up. It's like one of those drop ones, right? And I was like halfway up. I'm like, okay, that's enough. You can like call me down. I was like calling out to the people down below. I'm like, no, just like slowly bring me down. I'm done. It's high enough. And I'm like, got up there. I'm just like, great. I'm stuck here now. I may as well enjoy the scenery. And so I got a photo of myself. I'm just laughing my ass off, just cruising down. I'm like, oh, okay. I laugh. So I'll be like in sheer danger. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that thing's running towards me. Okay, I better run. And I'm just gonna laugh. I don't know.
I use that with a client of mine. She has a particular fear of an object as we walk down the street. So every time I see this object, I just get a really kind of like a fake serious face where it's like I'm acting. And I'm like, don't worry, I got you. We're good. And I'll stand in front of it and I'll do this. And I'll be like, go, run. Aww. It's all good. I got you. I got your back. And she started laughing. She was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm protecting you from the thing that you're scared of, right? You're scared of it. And she was like, yeah, but now it's funny, so I'm not scared of it anymore. And she, since then, she hasn't been, like, she hardly notices them.
Because she probably sees you in her mind's eye every time going,
kindness. Yeah, but she did that out of kindness. She was taking it as okay, that's your genuine fear. And that's okay. I'm going to take it at your level, and that's how that's how you view the world. And so this is me caring for you. because that's a real fear for you. And
Yeah.
it kind of like, and then she could see the ridiculousness in it.
Yeah. It reminded, actually, I got that the overall technique of just accepting that that's your fear and going with it from the movie Patch Adams. When, I don't know if you've seen that, where
Yeah.
he's boarding with a guy who thinks that squirrels are attacking him, so he just flips the bed over and he's like, "Where are they? I got a imaginary gun. We'll take care of them. Where are they? Just tell me where they are." And starts like helping him protect himself, and that was him imagining how to get out of this situation. He literally walked him through how to get out of this situation, because now he's got a friend, and it changed the neural pathways.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's habit as well, right? Like in capoeira, we have a saying where it's like the worse the situation, the bigger the smile has to be in your face. So and those little things, they become a habit. So instead of like frowning and so, that, you force yourself to smile in the devil's face, so to say, and that already, that there's some kind of change, and that little change in your physicality, it affects other parts of your being, and as soon as like there's a whole you have a new perspective again, and you come from a different point of view. The trauma economy, I was reminded of a song, I think it's a reggae song from Max Romeo. It must be like War in a Babylon, and they sing, "It's simple out there, make we slide out there." So if it's slippery out there, if it's all slippery, then what we do is we're sliding out there. So whatever it is,
Yeah.
so instead of like falling down, and so okay, make we slide, so we slide out there. And I was reminded of the of the ability of people in Brazil, and especially like in Jamaica as well, that I saw and witnessed. And some of the stories I heard actually is there was this big hurricane in Jamaica in the 90s, way before I went there, called Gilbert, and it mashed up the island really badly, like destroyed like a lot of houses, and people, their roof fly off, and then from the day after, like people start write music and songs about it. You see people like on the roadside, like selling T-shirts. "I'm a Gilbert survivor," like, and running jokes about it. And they don't have no house, they have no roof, they don't know what to eat tomorrow, but they still come up with something. Now I hear that in downtown Kingston, people like on the roadside, they just take a little bucket and put some water in there, and it's like, "Hand sanitizer, don't make COVID catch you. Come here, 50 cents, sanitize your hands, wash your hands." So it's like ingenious. So they come up with any kind of ideas, and laugh it off and make a little money on the side with it. But so there is possibilities within every moment to kind of turn it around and flip it around, and see it from, I guess, a brighter side, or a side that more
That's
will help you to advance on your journey, on where you want to go, and not make circumstances direct you in a direction that you don't feel
what I
comfortable.
what I love about what you said is make it your own. So we've been given, like we've been talking about, only two options, and they're not even our own. They have been created by somebody else. We're just given these only two options. So make your own possibilities, make your own options. I love it.
But the whole thing is,
That
sorry, go ahead, Willow.
I was gonna say, Deirdre, that reminds me of the conversation we had about one of your children asking for the fan, and you were like, "No, I don't want to go get that."
Do you want me to tell
go
it?
get it, yeah.
Oh, okay. So she's talking about. So I'm in the process of cleaning out my house, and I have just an old fan, just plug in the wall, and it stopped rotating. So I put it in the trailer to take it to the tip, and he saw an opportunity in it. He goes, "Mum, I want the fan." I'm like, "No, I'm not having the fan sitting around the house. It's broken and it needs to go." He goes, "No, it's a rocket ship." I'm like, "Look, okay, if you can climb into the trailer, it's a 6x4 trailer, like it's a huge trailer, it's got a big cage on it." I said, "Look, if you can get it out of the trailer, it's yours. Do whatever you like with it. That's totally fine." And like within 5 minutes, he comes in, he picks up, he goes, "See, I got it." I'm like, "Okay, now you need to tell me, how did you figure out how to do it?" He goes, "Oh, I just opened the little door down below underneath the cage, and then I just kind of slid it out." I'm like, "Okay, you know what? You put all that effort in, go and make your rocket ship." And so there was an old rocket ship that he put together that was sitting in my living room for like 2 or 3 days.
But I was telling her that usually there's only two options. There's, I want the fan, and Mom doesn't want the fan. So I either get what I want or mom gets what she wants. And if I get what I want, mom might be mad. That would have been the case. And I told her, I was like, if I had gotten that fan, my mom would have been like, I told you no.
Yep. That was my experience growing up too. And for me, creativity is like my number one thing for the kids. Even if it means that I've got a broken fan in my lounge room with a massive box sticky duct tape together, and it's all kind of taking up space. That's okay. It's his plaything. It's his toy at the moment, and that's what he wants to do. He needs to imagine that for himself.
Yeah, a couple things that came to mind in regard to some of the things that a few of you mentioned. Long-term thinking as a way of really kind of being able to endure suffering. If it's something that you really want, people will go and do practically anything if if that thing, if that action gets what they want. And so the people will sacrifice and suffer if they have a long-term goal in mind. And so certainly
Yeah, that's what I try to teach of the
creating that
kids,
kind of,
because what happened is I started noticing it. They used to watch those Easter egg unwrapping things on YouTube, or watch people build stuff on YouTube, and these are only like 2-minute videos, and I started getting concerned that they don't have a real representation of what it takes to create something. And so I stopped letting them, like, if they want to get ideas to make something, they can watch those videos, but they need to learn how to resource it something. If they have their idea, they have to map it out, and then they have to find the resources. And then if they can't find the resources, then they have to figure out how they're going to get those resources to get that end result. So it's kind of teaching them realistic timeframes as well.
yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is problem solving, and it's not necessarily solving the big problem. It might be just solving a small problem, but any kind of problem that can be solved is kind of the key to getting the problem solving started. And so just a little something that maybe anything that can help somebody. You mentioned, giving somebody $5 to get them where they need to go. If that's enough to solve a problem, then solving a problem as an example for others is certainly something valuable. And then the third thing is networking. As Agnieszka mentioned, when you come together and collaborate on solving problems, or addressing an issue, when we put minds together, all kinds of magical things can happen. And this can also be with problems or worries, or all those kind of things. By just putting them out there in front of other people to discuss, it's a really a way to get rid of that, that ghost or monster or elephant in the closet kind of thing that nobody wants to talk about. And maybe even doing it in a way that's funny or comedic is, I think George Carlin was a great one for kind of pointing out the obvious that everybody else didn't seem to ever talk about, but somehow make it funny by almost insulting people with their, ignorance and blindness towards these things that, you know, everybody actually sees, but they just don't know how to interpret. And when he throws it into a comedic routine, then everybody, oh yeah, now we can talk about it.
The other thing
I
that
think
I do in order to deal with it, I'm going to say it this time. The other thing that I do in order to deal with the trauma economy and the trauma onslaught in my life is that I choose to find out if I really know something. Like, oh, this is going on. Do I really know this? Is it really affecting me right now? What can I do about it? And like when it comes to predictions and like these morose kind of things, like, oh, this is going to happen and this is going to happen, we don't know what's going to happen. We have no idea what's going to happen. We can look at other countries, we can look at what happened here or there, but in reality we have no idea what's going to happen. So yeah, that could happen. That's definitely an option. What are the other things that could happen? And then when I come up with 5 different options, 5 different scenarios that could possibly happen, I find I'm no longer attached to the worst case scenario that maybe was fed to me or presented to me by somebody. And so then I can go, okay, let's see what happens. Like take the pressure out of the information.
Something else I wanted to point out. Go ahead.
I was gonna say with problem solving, that one of the biggest roadblocks to that is agency, like having personal agency, which is, I would say that it's a slightly different definition from autonomy. Agency is more having the idea and the feeling that you know you have the right to have a say in your day-to-day life. And there's a lot of people around here walking around thinking that they have agency because they are picking the choices that are being presented to them, and therefore there is no use for problem solving. In fact, actual problem solving, would be really difficult if you don't have any personal agency, which ties back to the trauma economy, because your agency is almost completely diminished when you are in an abusive situation, especially one at young age, and you can't get out of. You're literally being conditioned to say or to think that you have no control over your life.
Would you say that the what's happening on the media right now is an abusive situation for young people right now?
My personal theory is that there are a bunch of people who have experienced that lack of control. They have been abused many different ways through many different parts of our system. And this ties into my personal views about like voting, and I feel like wanting to have complete control and say over a mass number of people is a way of externalizing all. You're trying to control everything in your environment because you feel out of control. When you feel in control, you don't give a shit what your neighbors do.
Yeah.
You don't care.
You know, I sometimes think that people in other countries, like third world countries like Mexico and Jamaica and Africa, whatever, have more personal agency than people in first world countries like Canada and the US. Do you guys think that's true?
I would definitely agree with that.
I would say that there's probably overall, yeah, more. I noticed that people who have lived in like a foreign country, they tend to have a little bit more agency about them. But in other areas, like I don't know, it's not so cut and dry.
I just think that in certain countries, people are less likely to count on somebody to save them, and so they're more likely to count on themselves.
Oh, I would agree to that, especially, if you look poor people of third world countries, then from my experience, there is like there's no big sense of illusion in terms of, the government is good, and because there's so much, like look at Jamaica, for example, there's so much killing going on, by government forces on the civilian. I think they're one of the leading, by statistics, countries in the world in terms of killings that are being done through the police on the on civilian population. So that in itself as a fact is, you cannot, it's difficult to tell your child that, oh, like if you're lost, go to the next policeman and ask him for the way, and he's going to be friendly, like guiding you around. That's like, people grow up there knowing that there's a, perceived 50-50 chance of talking to somebody who was killed, with impunity. If you talk to people like that, so that's kind of, if people grow up with that sense, then it's like, everybody knows, okay, they're corrupt and they're stealing and they're thieving, and so that's just what it is, and people don't have no illusion about, oh yeah, but they're in there for the good of all of us. And so I would agree on that level, yeah. And that's just by my experience, of course, which is not representative of everybody of all countries that even was in, but I think poverty and just distress or maybe continuous trauma that you would have experienced from early on is makes you disillusioned about, or makes you look through, becomes streetwise or street smart in a way, and you can look through scams that are being pulled, whether they're like on a street level or whether they're on a higher level as well.
That's very eloquent.
That's actually I found out. So when I was in like elementary school, junior high, high school, people used to always refer to me, "Oh, you're such an old soul," and I hate that term now. I hate it because it refers to like people who have been traumatized. They have an air about them. They have seen a much more mature uh side of life than you're supposed to be able to see at that age, and they've experienced that part of their map is much more filled out than anyone else of their age, basically. So yeah, they seem like an old soul, and it's wonderful to speak to them because you're it's almost like you're talking to an equal. But I can't tell you how many times that term floated around my high school, and now looking back I'm like, it makes a lot of sense if you apply a trauma history to almost every single one of these. It makes a lot of sense.
You know, with six people on the show, time really flies, and we we don't seem to get everything out we want to. But you know, the what I would consider the opposite to the trauma economy is essentially what I would call the invisible economy, which is all the things that aren't recognized by money. You know, the things that you can't buy or sell with money, or the things that are undervalued or not valued by the money economy. And there is a tremendous amount of that value that is not being recognized that we can share with each other. And so there's things like bartering, there is things like the share economy, there's a gifting economy, and really behind the money is something called value creation, which is something we do when we innovate and we utilize the skills that we have to improve the quality of life of each other. And so all those things are recognized when we exchange the value that those things have. And so through these things like bartering and sharing and gifting and
Um,
all the other ways
could
that
you
are out there. Go ahead.
could you like have a real life example, like where, so that I could understand that a bit more? Like,
Well, like for example, if you just went over to your neighbors and said, "Hey, I baked some extra, brownies or something like that,"
What kind of
you're
brownies?
well, I don't
The
know,
good kind.
walnuts with
Not the
fudge
Canadian
and
ones.
but and you give those brownies to the other people, but in giving them, they find out, oh my God, you make the best brownie I've ever had. I want to tell my friends. And next thing you know, you've, they've helped you recognize that you do something incredibly valuable that could
Mhm.
really bring about, happiness to other people's lives. So you might start a business, or you might just start exchanging brownies for people mowing your lawn or people fixing your car or those kind of things. So there's all kinds of different ways and values and skill sets that we have that just because we're not getting paid for them doesn't necessarily mean they're not extremely valuable and useful. And this is the thing that I've really learned in becoming an Acapulqueño, is that when you become valuable to the community of people around you, you're golden. It's done.
Mhm.
You're safe, and that's really the key. Is building a community of people around you that you value and that you deliver value to, that are going to do the same when times get tough and you need something.
Mm. It's
Phrasing
really
excellence.
Yeah.
So, are we doing the journaling thing?
Yeah, we can move into the journaling if anybody has got any journaling reports to volunteer.
No, I've
Yeah.
I've got that big one coming up for this week. That's enough for me.
For the second week in a row, I'm a complete failure in journaling. I'm sorry. But
Slacked.
I still have Willow's homework piece, and it is on my radar. And that may be why I haven't been journaling, because I feel I have to get through that before I can journal. So
What if
I'm
you viewed
familiar
that as your journaling?
with journaling.
I did, but that's why I
Oh.
didn't do anything.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, same. That's how I'm taking it. I'm like, if I've got an exercise, if you guys give me an exercise, like specifically journal specific, then I won't do Mike's weekly journaling update because I feel like that's enough for me.
I felt I was journaling today without journaling, because I sat down like it was actually more than 2 hours, I believe, like writing, but it wasn't to write my journal, but it was to write a response and to write to that group that I was mentioning even, from early on. Um, and I just like I just I consciously put myself in a mode where I was connecting with moments and with people that brought me, how would you say, to like a really profound space on my inside. So because I really wanted to write from that space, so I didn't like, and there's not confusion, but there's a lot of different, and there's emotions attached to some people, how they reacted. And so, and I was like very not personal. I just put out one little video without commenting, without anything, and then it just created like a backlash from various angles. And I didn't take any stance so to it now. So, but it was time for me to kind of to take a stance as well, and to I saw the opportunities that I had with that. Like the posture that I'm taking right now, it could cut off. It could harden lines. It could turn people off. Um, and I'm not really afraid of that. But I thought, there's more. I have there's a potential that I have within me of doing more than that. And if that is like the culmination of all my life, this moment right now, how can I use the skills and the ability that I have to express myself, to write, and to write from that part within me, like from a higher self that does actually facilitate growth, not only within me but within everybody who reads those lines. So I guess the future will tell if I have achieved that or not. But I think even of setting a strong intention like that, of expressing yourself through writing, um, and of letting it like flow through you, and using the senses that you have, using the emotions and the skills that you have, instead of them kind of overwriting you, and you become your emotions, or becoming whatever clogs up your mind in the very moment. But to go beyond that, and to utilize those aspects that we have in order to express something that really goes deep and that goes beyond them, and which then hopefully also will touch people on that level. So even if they recognize that, I have totally different emotions attached to this thing, and I can't like stand even the thought of that, and I'm in a whole different corner of the room uh, concerning that theme, or that point of view, but still they feel that where I'm coming from is beyond that. So I think that is something that I strive to achieve with that. So I report what happened after that.
Nice.
And I felt like I thought about journaling right there, because I was, oh no, today like I want to sit down and do some journaling, but then this took so long, and then I didn't find the physical time to sit down with my book. But I thought, oh, actually that's what I'm really doing, because that's what it's really about. Because if I journal also, I want to write from my heart, and really let be carried away from that. So that's what happened while writing that. So let's see what happens with that.
Nice. Good
Jim,
job.
you had something? No.
He's
I
as
think
successful as I, obviously.
I would say that it again. I'll mention this. This is also about failing too, because as if it doesn't feel right and it doesn't work for you, then and you fail at getting what you want, and exercising your willpower, that's also great information. And so this is also kind of an exercise in failing fast. So when people aren't, people aren't coming up with a thing, because this is a good habit. I'm telling you, it's a great habit, and there's going to be so many valuable things that comes from it for you. It is something to institute in your life in some way, fashion, or form. But how you do it is really your own. But that's the thing, is you've got to make it your own. You've got to put it into a daily habit, or a habit, or a practice that works for you. But
Just
I
keep
guarantee
encouraging
you it's
us.
valuable. Yeah.
Just
and
yeah.
and that's the thing. But at the same time, failing is good as well. And this is one of the other lessons that we can learn, is that, man, failing is great information. It's great feedback. So don't feel bad if you didn't do what you said you were going to do, or didn't do it the way you thought you were going to do it. That's just another opportunity to, hey, why didn't that work? Why didn't I do it? What's going on? What's the hang up? Is this something that I really want, or is there something else? All these questions are really important in learning who you are, and what it is you want, and what's really valuable and important for you. And um, but in the end, it is going to be something that is going to be very powerful, a very powerful habit that's going to make a big difference.
Don't worry, we're not
And
giving up. We're just failing this week.
and with
Yeah.
that in mind, if you don't have anything to write about, we've got the Wednesday show, which is going to be about the fear of death. And writing a eulogy, or creating a plan for your funeral, confronting your own death and fear of dying and no longer existing. I actually did a interview today, which I'm going to hopefully get out on my BitChute channel, Mike on Fire, if you want to find me. But we talk a lot about the fear of death, and why it's such a big problem for a lot of people, that they don't necessarily understand why it is what it is. But it is really hindering a lot of people from moving into understanding who they are, and why it's valuable to you know create an incredible willpower for what you want and what's important for you.
Mhm.
And in addition to that, I want to mention that next week, Willow is going to be putting together a trauma presentation. You want to mention that for just a tidbit of time?
I wish I had something a little more prepared, to be honest, until you mentioned that. I was like, oh yeah, I am doing that next week. Crap.
You have a ton of stuff prepared.
I do.
Yeah, she does.
So I have started I don't think we've settled on a name yet. The closest thing we have is
It's
a
okay, it's a
post.
secret till next week.
Oh,
Don't worry.
okay, okay. Basically, it's fundamentals, how to um, get through the symptoms of PTSD, CPTSD, trauma, just in general. Because the symptoms, when you're healing, can be quite intense and overwhelming, and it can make you feel like you're crazy. So, this is just my way of trying to help support people and be like, you're not crazy. This is what's going on. You can get through
Mhm.
this.
Nice.
It's okay. So,
Nice. Well said.
thank you.
And a reminder about our show and the time. We are, I guess, moving into more time changes. I know Mexico changes their time on the 5th of April. So we'll be moving back to Central
Idiot.
Time. But so Germany has moved their time as well.
Forward, man.
Can we tell
Yeah.
it? Can we say our individual times and days? Would that be okay? Maybe that might be easier for everybody. So I go
Sure.
to a time zone converter, and unless you guys tell me, no, the times change, then I just go off of what it says, and then I end up being like an hour
But
out.
it's always 7:30 Eastern. So
Here.
whatever our
For me.
own times moves, yeah, it's always Willow's time. Every day.
And then also for our autonomy people watching or listening, I've got a special delivery on Wednesday, 9 p.m. I'm going to be interviewing Gina Carr, and she is an incredible entrepreneur and just presenter, speaker extraordinaire. And I certainly invite everybody to get in there because she's going to do. She's going to basically present about leadership, ethics, and organization, and leading in a crisis circumstance. So she's kind of demonstrating that. I've been taking a couple of her seminars and doing some of her free workshops. And,
So now you're gonna have to add a link to today's description too.
oh boy, but yeah. I would certainly invite people to be involved in that because she is demonstrating exactly what we're talking about in a circumstance where you've got crisis or hysteria. She's basically taking the lead and taking on, here's a solution, who wants it, and obviously also addressing a need, seeing a need and addressing it. So with all that said, thank you so much for your time and attention. I know we started a little late, and I guess we're running a little long, but thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. And again, 7:30 Eastern, Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And
That's 4:30 Pacific, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Dennis, what is it in Germany?
That's Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 1:30 in the morning.
Nice. Deirdre, what's it in Australia, in Brisbane?
On the east coast of Australia, that is, what is it? Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 9:30 in the morning.
Nice.
The next day.
Then next day.
Not the same day.
No, it's
as the rest
it's
of
Tuesday. No, okay, is it?
Yeah.
No,
So Tim
let
is
me-
in. So that was correct. That was correct. So Tim is in Texas. What is it in Texas?
It is 6:30 p.m.
6:30, Monday, Wednesday,
Monday,
and
Wednesday, and Thursday.
Thursday.
Yes.
And
Mexico
Willow's
for the-
time is
for the
repeated
next
every
week,
single day.
It'll be
Yeah, I'm
5:30.
ordinary.
5:30.
You're the benchmark. You're our greenish.
Oh, I feel bad for you guys.
Anyway, I'm going to
What was
play
that,
the
Mike?
outro. What did
I
Mike
didn't
say?
hear Mike.
What did Mike say?
I was just going to say it was 5:30 for Mexico.
Oh,
yeah.
for
next
Mexico,
week, and then we move into our new time zone, which is back to Central Time.
which will be
What
the
time
same
will
as
it be then?
Tim's, 6:30.
Oh, okay.
He'll be aligned with Tim. Now he's aligned with no one, but he'll be aligned with Tim in.
We should probably
a few
let our
days.
listeners go. It's 15 after.
All right, I'm playing the outro now. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye. I love that.